If you've ever sat there thinking about everything you could become while somehow struggling to begin even the smallest thing, then you've probably spent a long time misunderstanding yourself. People are very quick to call this laziness, but actually, truly lazy people rarely feel tormented by their own potential. They don't lie awake thinking about the life they could have lived. They don't carry that quiet guilt in ordinary moments. And they certainly don't feel exhausted from doing almost nothing. That exhaustion means something, and usually it's psychological. You see, some people have very ambitious minds, but very cautious nervous systems. That creates a special kind of person. From the outside, they can look distracted, unfocused, unmotivated. But internally, there's often an enormous amount happening. Constant thinking, constant self-monitoring, constant imagining. The mind keeps moving, even when the body doesn't. I've seen people spend hours planning a future they deeply want, and then avoid answering a simple email for 3 days. Not because the email is difficult, but because small actions begin to carry emotional weight when someone ties too much meaning to who they're supposed to become. That's the important part. The task itself is rarely the real problem. The meaning attached to the task is. A simple application starts feeling like a judgment of your intelligence. A creative project starts feeling like proof of whether you're truly talented. Even replying to someone can feel strangely exposing, so the mind hesitates. And hesitation, over time, starts looking like laziness. But often, it's protection. That's a very different thing. You have to understand, the human mind is not designed primarily to make us successful. It's designed to protect us from emotional danger. And sometimes, trying matters too much, especially for people who built their identity around potential very early in life. Perhaps they were called gifted, promising, mature, intelligent. Sometimes praised not simply for existing, but for what they might become. Children absorb these things very deeply. Eventually, achievement stops feeling like a healthy desire. It starts feeling tied to worth, to safety, to love. And when that happens, effort becomes emotionally complicated. Because now, failure isn't just failure. It feels personal. So the person develops a curious relationship with action. They dream constantly, but delay endlessly, not because they lack ambition, quite the opposite. Their ambition has become so emotionally important that action itself starts feeling dangerous. You'll notice this in small ways. They prepare excessively before beginning. They wait for the right mood. They research things long after they already understand enough to start. And they often feel tired before they've even begun. That fatigue confuses them. But mental tension is exhausting, especially when someone is carrying an idealized version of themselves in their head all day long. And here is where it becomes a little more interesting. Many ambitious people are not actually afraid of work. They're afraid of finding out something painful about themselves. That's the hidden layer underneath a great deal of procrastination. Because as long as the dream stays in the imagination, it stays perfect, untouched. But reality is different. Reality introduces limits, imperfection, comparison. The moment you truly try, you risk discovering that the imagined version of yourself may not fully exist. And for some people, that feels devastating. So the mind creates distance, not consciously, of course. Human beings are rarely that deliberate with themselves. It happens quietly. A delay here, a distraction there, an endless need to prepare, just enough distance to preserve the fantasy. Because fantasy is emotionally safer than confrontation. You see this especially in people who say things like, I know I could do more if I really applied myself. There's sadness hidden inside that sentence, but also protection, because if they never fully try, then their potential remains intact. The possibility survives, and the mind can continue believing, one day I'll become who I was supposed to be. That belief can become emotionally addictive, sometimes more comforting than reality itself. Now, none of this means the person is weak. Quite the opposite, actually. Many of these individuals are carrying extraordinary amounts of internal pressure. They simply learn to direct that pressure inward instead of outward. So instead of visible struggle, they experience invisible paralysis. That's why some highly ambitious people appear calm while constantly feeling behind in life. Their nervous system never truly rests. Even during rest, there's guilt. Even during leisure, there's self-surveillance. A voice quietly whispering, you should be doing more. You're wasting time. You're falling behind. After enough years, they stop trusting themselves, and eventually they stop trying to understand themselves. They settle for the simpler explanation. Maybe I'm just lazy. But simple explanations are often psychologically inaccurate. Human behavior usually has a logic underneath it. Even avoidance has meaning. Even procrastination serves a purpose. Sometimes the purpose is protecting a fragile identity. Sometimes it's avoiding shame. Sometimes it's preserving hope, because hope can be easier to live with than reality. And once you begin seeing these patterns, certain things suddenly make sense. Why some people consume endless information but rarely move. Why some people fantasize about dramatic life changes but struggle with ordinary routines. Why some people seem deeply capable, yet strangely stuck. It's not always about discipline. Very often it's about emotional safety. A person can want success very deeply and still fear what success demands psychologically: exposure, uncertainty, evaluation. To the nervous system, those things can feel threatening, especially if someone learned early in life that being valuable meant being exceptional. And so they remain suspended between two painful states, too ambitious to relax, too psychologically burdened to move freely. That's an exhausting way to live. But once you recognize the pattern, something shifts quietly. Not because everything suddenly changes, but because you stop viewing yourself as a moral failure. You begin understanding that your behavior may have been protecting something all along: a fear, a wound, an identity. And strangely enough, that understanding alone can soften the shame people have carried for years, because it was never random. There was always a reason beneath it. And once you see that reason clearly, you begin seeing yourself more clearly too.